Hey guys, what's up? It's Rygar the Destroyer, and today we're going to be doing part 2 of my series where I take a closer look at my entire 1/6 scale collection. Now today, as you can see, we're going to be doing all of my Hot Toys figures, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alright, to begin with, we're going to go ahead and take a look at my original Trilogy hero cast. Obviously, I don't have everybody, but these are the characters that I cherry-picked because I felt that Hot Toys did the best job with these characters in these costumes. So first off, we have got Han Solo, and this figure I got in a 2-pack with Chewbacca, and Hot Toys just nailed it. This figure looks amazing. You know, I think as far as actual likeness to Harrison Ford and everything, nobody has really done better. It looks great and the costume looks fantastic. You know, these figures are a lot more expensive typically than the sideshows, at least the older ones. But I feel like you really get what you pay for with these just because everything is done just that much better. Every little detail on these has been touched and they just look fantastic. The next figure, as you can see, is Chewbacca, and I'll try and pull him forward here. He's so tall, he's hard to get in frame, but this figure is unusual in that it has actual hair on it. None of this is sculpted. It's basically a 1/6 scale figure wearing a fur suit, and really that's a pretty bold move for Hot Toys to make. Hasbro has tried more than once to make a Chewbacca with actual fur, and really they haven't succeeded either time that they've done it, but Hot Toys just nailed it here. It looks fantastic. The fur doesn't like fray and get everywhere. I don't know how they treated this, but it like wants to lay as if it is, you know, actually full size, which is super cool. So I think that this is probably one of my favorite Hot Toys figures that I own just because of how different it is and how crazy they had to go to get this to actually work. So super cool figure. And like I said, I got him in a 2-pack with Han Solo. Next to him, we have got Farm Boy Luke, if I can snake him out here. Super cool. As you can see, the likeness is fantastic. These figures are incredibly lifelike. As you can see, his hair is incredibly well sculpted. And the reason that I went with this Luke and not any other Luke is just that I felt that the Farm Boy Luke costume is the most iconic. You know, because these figures are so much more expensive than really anything else on the market, you really have to, at least in my opinion, cherry pick the ones that you want because honestly, like, you know, when these figures are $200 plus, you can't be buying too many of them. So go ahead and snake him back in here. Finally, we have Princess Leia, and again, I've got her in her kind of like first appearance outfit. Again, I thought that that was the most iconic. They really just did a fantastic job on this figure. Just the skin looks so real. It's amazing. It doesn't look like a doll at all or like an action figure at all. And I actually very frequently I see these figures, their photos being used in like thumbnails and stuff on YouTube. I don't think people even realize that they're not actual people. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the next set. Up next, we have my Sith Lord characters all laid out here. Over on the left, we've got Force Awakens Kylo Ren. Really cool. This is personally my favorite version of the character, at least the favorite outfit. I think it looks cool with the helmet and with the kind of longer robes. I think looks awesome. And this figure in particular, the fabrics that they chose for the tunic and everything just look fantastic. It looks like he literally walked right off set, which is really cool. Pushing him back and moving on to Palpatine right here in the middle, the Emperor is probably one of my favorite Hot Toys figures that I have. It's pretty hard to choose, but I think this one really takes the cake for me. It's hard to see, but he is incredibly well sculpted in the face, and he's actually got the smile, which I think really sells it for me. A lot of times when you do a sculpted expression on a figure, I don't think it works, but this is one example of the way you do it right. He looks so evil, and he looks just like he did in the movie. This figure is absolutely fantastic, and I think it's one that a lot of people really want, and I think it's one that a lot of people should have in their collection just because it's the Emperor, he's so iconic, and they did a fantastic job on it. Now finally over here, this is actually the only prequel character that I have from Hot Toys, and that is Count Dooku. And this figure is incredibly well done. The likeness to Christopher Lee is fantastic, like a lot of the other Hot Toys figures. But this figure, it just really, I think, stands out on the shelf with these like really rich browns that he's got in his cloak, and a really, really well done figure. Now, I will say this is the best 1/6 scale Count Dooku, even though he doesn't have a ton of competition. But the Hasbro one, I have to mention it, is really well done as well. That's one of my favorite Hasbro 12-inch figures. But for me, as far as Count Dooku goes, this one takes the cake for sure. So let's go ahead and move on to the next ones. Alright, up next we have got my First Order Troopers. As you can see here over on the left, I've got the First Order Snowtrooper Officer and the regular First Order Snowtrooper. And I actually got these two figures in a 2-pack together, and I wouldn't normally do that. I wouldn't normally spend that much money on buying two what are essentially background characters. But at the time, at least at the time that I bought these, you could get them for dirt cheap, and they're incredibly obtainable. And really, the figures themselves look great, whether or not they were, you know, huge features in the movie. They do look great. The mix of the, you know, really shiny plastic parts with the, you know, more satin fabric, I think looks really great. And then having two of them so that they've always got a pair on the shelf, I think looks nice. And I would definitely recommend these two figures in a pack as kind of an entry point into Hot Toy collecting or 1/6 scale collecting, because at least, you know, I'm not sure anymore, but at least at the time that I bought these, you could get them for way cheaper than you could just, you know, in an individual figure, and you get a lot of value out of that. So I thought that that was really cool. Right next to those guys, there is this First Order Stormtrooper, and this one came packed and a 2-pack with Finn. And when you did that, he came with the riot shield and the baton. So I've got this one kind of set up like Traitor, which I think is really cool. And this mold, I guess, for the First Order Snowtrooper looks fantastic. I mean, literally like it walked off the set of the movie. There's only one thing that I don't like about this mold, and it's not entirely Hot Toys' fault. It's, you know, partially just the design of the character, but the articulation is abysmal. These figures are really hard to pose, and we'll talk about that more with this one over here. But honestly, this one looks good. Just the posability is a little bit limited, which is always disappointing. And then finally, we've got this one. This is the Heavy Gunner, and this is the first time I think ever that I was disappointed by a Hot Toys figure when I opened it out of the box. And I kind of expected that going into it, but even with the low expectations, I was still a little bit disappointed. And the reason for that is that, you could get this figure for just over $100. That's what I paid. And it's a cool figure, but unfortunately, the whole draw of this figure is that he comes with this huge blaster, and it is impossible to get him to hold it. This is pretty much how I have to pose him, and he does look cool posed like this. It's still a really amazing figure. It's just a little disappointing that you couldn't get him to actually hold them. So overall, I think this is probably my least favorite Hot Toys figure. That being said, it is still amazing. Even with him being a little bit disappointing, it still looks fantastic when it's on your shelf. And for normal people who aren't into action figures, they will always look at these figures, good or bad, and go, wow, which is something that I think is really cool. The last two figures that I've got in my collection are Rey and Finn, and we'll start off with Rey over here on the side. Obviously, this is the Force Awakens outfit, and like every other figure that they do from Hot Toys, this figure looks amazing. The costume looks great. The likeness looks great, the sculpt work, everything looks really cool. And personally, this is my favorite outfit for Rey, which is why I picked this one up. I thought it looked really cool and was definitely worth, I think, adding to the collection. Now, as I mentioned before, I did get this Finn in a 2-pack with a First Order Stormtrooper, and at least at the time, that was the best way to buy Finn. I think it made him much cheaper than the individual release, but either way, this figure is awesome. The costume work on it looks amazing. Just like Rey, face work, or sculpt work on the face looks fantastic. But one thing that I do want to say about these figures is that it seems like something is missing. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that. I wish that Hot Toys would come out with a Poe. He's not really my favorite character necessarily, but I think that he completes the set here. Just have Poe in his flight suit or something. As a figure, I think would just be really awesome. But either way, that's all of the Hot Toys figures that are in my collection. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I guess I'll see you guys later.